And welcome back to the channel. Mr. Acolyte here, coming at you with my visual guide for Guilty Gear Strive 2.0. This is it, the massive relaunch of Guilty Gear Strive. This is no ordinary patch. This is basically a sequel game. The amount of changes to the system alone is shocking, and in this video we're going to go over everything step by step. I'm going to show you visually what all the changes look like so that the patch notes actually make complete sense and you know exactly what's going on. We're also going to go character by character, of course. Timestamps below if you want to see the character that you're interested in. If you do hit up the timestamps, I only ask that you go ahead and give the video a like, as it does help out the channel a lot. And these visual guides are a lot of work, so I would greatly appreciate a like, as it does, again, help out a lot, and I do greatly appreciate it. But with that being said, there is a lot to cover, so let's not waste any time and jump right on into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and cover is the system mechanic changes, and then after that we will jump into the character changes. Now, the important thing to note about the character changes is that there are a lot per character. I mean a ton. So in the interest of time, I'm only going to be covering all of the major changes outlined by the devs for each character. If you look at the patch notes and you see something there that's not in the video, you know, it's not that, you know, I forgot or I didn't want to talk about it. It's just in the interest of time, I'm not going to cover every single little, you know, number change, or else this video is going to be like 5 hours long. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the mechanic changes. Okay, so before we get to the characters, we're going to have to, of course, talk about the system mechanic changes. This being a brand new version of the game, the system mechanic changes are not like they usually are, where they're just little tweaks here and there. These are actually massive changes that completely change the entire way the game is played. This really is basically Strive 2 with how different these changes are. So let's go ahead and go one by one and talk about all the new system mechanic changes. So starting off with Wild Assault. I can't show you Wild Assault because it got deleted. It's no longer in the game. That mechanic has been replaced with Counter Blitz. So the biggest problem with Wild Assault was that there were too many instances where it was too strong, and it kind of took over the entire pacing of the game. So to counteract that, it can only be used in a very specific situation, and it's, as the name implies, it's during a counter hit. So similar to Wild Assault, Counter Blitz still uses 50% of your burst gauge. However, again, it can only be triggered during a counter hit, and specifically a slow motion counter hit. So if you get like a far slash or a heavy slash and you get the big slowdown, you can press forward and dust to activate Counter Blitz. So pretty cool. I like the animation. It's very impactful. And the big thing about this is it's very easy to do and very easy to understand. Besides Wild Assault just being way too strong, another big reason the developers deleted it was that they felt that it was a little too complex for more casual players. Most casual players wouldn't even use Wild Assault because they didn't really see the benefit of it. The devs felt that it took too long for you to play the game too much for you to actually see the benefit of it and start using it. So Counter Blitz, on the other hand, is very straightforward and very simple. Get a counter hit, activate it, get a big, you know, damage spike, get a hard knockdown. Anybody of any skill level can do it and see the benefit of it, so players should be able to start using it right away. You don't have to have, you know, hundreds of hours before you start using a basic mechanic. Now, the big benefit of it is using it near the wall, because it will always trigger a wall break, meaning that it is a great way to trigger positive bonus and get your meter up. The other huge benefit of it is that it actually locks the opponent out of their burst. So if you want to get some damage, but you don't want your opponent to be able to burst, this is a great option. If you look at Soul's burst gauge right there, you see there's an X over it. So he's not allowed to burst until the entire animation is over and he stands up again. As you can see, Counter Blitz seems like a pretty straightforward mechanic with some pretty solid utility behind it. Next up, there is a big change to both hitboxes and hurt boxes. Starting with hurt boxes. Hurt boxes are now basically uniform across the board. There are two types. There are regular characters, and then there are large characters. The purpose of this change is to make combos more uniform across the board. Instead of having to learn a specific combo for Milia, and then another one for Chipp, and then another one for Nago, and then another one for Soul, you only have to learn a maximum of up to 2 different types of combos because there's only 2 types of hitboxes now. Large, which is Pot, Faust, Nago, Goldlewis, and Bedman, and then regular, which is everybody else. So that's a very good change because it's just going to simplify the amount of combos you have to learn without things getting too crazy and too complex. For hitboxes, they've added a new type of hitbox called a follow-up hitbox. I would describe it as a phantom hitbox. Basically, the way it works is certain special moves and certain buttons now have a hitbox on them that only activates if the opponent is in block stun or hit stun. So the idea is they want certain attacks to be effective when you're actively hitting the opponent, but weaker when you throw them out at neutral. The best way to show this off is a close slash. They have added the follow-up hitbox on close slashes. So long story short, close slashes are no longer going to be like a be-all, end-all button. They're now going to more likely lose to jumping buttons. Next up, changes to Burst. Burst now has a new input. You can do Burst by pressing D and S at the same time, or D and HS at the same time. This is to coincide with a change to Reflect Shield. Reflect Shield is no longer done by doing 214S. That input was very, very problematic. For one thing, if you were blocking low and then you tried to tech grab, there was a lot of times where the game would see that as a 214S and give you Reflect Shield, so the grab would be guaranteed. And then also, due to the fact that it was that kind of input, sometimes you wouldn't get it out when you needed it. So in order to fix all of that, they made it a very simple input of simply back, dust, and kick at the same time. If you just press all of those together, you can also do punch, back, kick, dust, and punch, and you will always get your reflect out, and there's very little chance of you messing up the input. There's also a change to Gold Burst. If you get knocked down and you wake up with a burst during the first 4 frames, it'll now be counted as a Gold Burst on your wake up. This is a really big change because, as you most likely know, Gold Burst results in a positive bonus. So if you do effectively hit your opponent with this on wake up, you could turn the tide of battle really quickly. To counteract that a little bit though, they did adjust the knockback of Gold Burst. It doesn't really push the opponent anywhere, so it is going to leave you a little bit more vulnerable if the opponent predicts you're going to do this. Next up, there is a massive change to PRC, the purple RC. This is the one that happens when you do a move and then use an RC to make yourself safe. Usually if somebody does like a whiff and they're like, oh no, I whiffed, I want to make myself safe, that's when the PRC comes out. The devs felt that PRC in general is just too strong in too many situations, so they made some pretty big changes to it. The main aspect is whenever you PRC now, everything you do afterwards is going to be scaled, especially the damage aspect. So let's say that I do Jam's lunge here, and then I PRC it into a grab. As you can see, that grab did very little damage. So any situation like that now, any sort of lunging move or anything of the sort, if you go into a PRC for a limited time, you're going to have damage reduction on. So any combo or any attack that gets started from that state is going to do much less damage, basically to just make the game overall more balanced, because the devs basically don't want you doing something unsafe, winning the exchange, and then doing big damage. In the spirit of that idea, moving on to the next topic, and that is throws. Throws have been changed considerably. In the previous version, if you were in the corner and the opponent tried to throw you, and you actually did jump out of the way, they would just PRC and then 6P you on the way down if you tried to land on them with a button and punish them. However, that is no longer possible. If you whiff a throw, you cannot RC it anymore. An unsafe throw is now an unsafe throw. So when you try to throw somebody, it is actually much more of a commitment, and there's no way out. So if you get punished, you get punished. This is also true, of course, of command grabs. If you go for a command grab and miss it, you cannot PRC it to save yourself. They also decided to buff throw breaks. If you actually break a throw, they extended the amount of time that the clash animation is on the screen so that you have more time to recognize that you broke it, and they increased the distance that you slide away. So basically, it's a bigger reward for actually breaking a throw, because in the previous version, if you broke a throw, it didn't really feel like it made much of a difference. But now with the increased duration of the animation and the increased distance, it should make more of a difference when you actually break someone's throw. And lastly, going back to command throws no longer have invincibility to throws. They will actually lose to normal throws now. That is a pretty huge change. Moving on to invincible options. Invincible options can no longer be Roman canceled. This is to balance out the overall risk reward of the game. So anything in the game that is considered invincible cannot be Roman canceled. That includes backdashes. Backdash RC was a very popular option at high level play. It is no longer possible. This was used defensively and offensively, and it is now out of the game. The devs just felt that it was a little bit too strong, and they feel that all options that have invincibility should not be cancelable, so you cannot do it off of a backdash anymore. Next up, invincible attacks. So they want the risk reward of invincible attacks to be more direct and obvious. So across the board, any attack that is invul is now more unsafe. So an example here is Soul's uppercut. This is pretty much an infamous attack for being kinda hard to punish because he doesn't leave the ground for very long. But as you can see in this new version, he has a lot more delay before he's actually able to block. And this is pretty universal. They went ahead and added a lot of landing lag to all the uppercuts in the game. So any character that has an invincible uppercut is pretty much set up like this to where they just have a lot more lag and it's a lot easier to punish. Moving on to faultless defense, also known as FD, also known as barrier block. This received a quality of life adjustment. So barrier block is a very useful technique for pushing the opponent away from you, but something that happens to a lot of players a lot is if you try to barrier block when you might not have enough meter, then an attack can come out and you end up getting counter hit and dying anyway. So to minimize the risk of that happening, they have basically removed the ability to do that. If you have no meter at all and you try to FD, you will still go into the blocking animation. So now you, kind of like in Grand Blue, you are able to block at neutral even if you don't have meter. You don't get the benefits of FD, just the animation, and this is just to help you not get an accidental button and accidentally get counter hit. Also, her blocking animation with Usagi is really funny looking. Next up, there are changes to the wall break. Wall break being one of the biggest aspects of Strive in general, and there's two massive changes to the wall break. First of all, the wall splat has been basically removed from the game. If you hit someone against the wall with a standing attack, you can no longer slump them. This was probably designed against Happy Chaos because he was one of the best characters at wall splatting, so that is no longer an option. If you put somebody on the wall, you either break them through the wall or you risk them teching in some random direction and ending up in a scramble. Next up, possibly an even bigger change, and that is a change to positive bonus after the wall break. In the previous version, if you broke the wall with a super, positive bonus would overwrite the meter penalty that usually comes with a super. That is no longer the case. If you break the wall with a super, you go into meter penalty like normal, and as you can see, you get very little tension back from the positive bonus. So now when you break the wall, you really have to weigh your options. Do you want to use an RC? Do you want to use a super? Or do you just want to break the wall normally and get the meter? Now you can't get both. This is a massive change, and it's really gonna affect how you play the game going forward and how you decide to spend your resources. Next up, low profile attacks. There is a universal change now to attacks that are considered low profiles. These are usually moves that slide really low and are very hard to hit. The devs feel that these attacks are very, very strong and very, very hard to counter. So any attack that fits this criteria of being like very low to the ground and being a crush now has extra scaling added on to both its damage and launch height. Keep in mind this also stacks with the PRC change. So if you do a sliding attack into a PRC, the damage is going to be that much more decreased. Moving on to the new damage proration rules. This is a new rule in effect that will change the damage scaling on easy to land attacks. They have a list of attacks here: lunging special moves, overheads, projectiles, stand punches, crouch punches, and low profiling moves. So any of those moves from that list, let's say an overhead attack. An overhead attack is, they're usually fast and they're easier to land. So if you start a combo with something like this, it's going to have more scaling and it's going to do less damage. So basically, overall, you're only going to get really big damage from like medium pokes or heavy pokes, heavy counter hit, stuff like that. But if you start a combo from something that is relatively easy to connect, you're not going to get as much damage anymore, which will basically lead to longer matches and less of you dying from a single bad guess. Next up is universal jab. This is a crazy one. They basically went down the board and unified all the jabs in the game. So everybody's jabs now are 5 frames. They have removed all 4-frame buttons. So now everybody is on the same page in terms of trying to take their turn back. It's no longer a case of, oh, your character has a faster button than mine, so, I'm in trouble when you get close to me. No, everybody is on the same page, so it's easier to understand when and where you can take your turn. Another universal aspect that has been unified across the cast is 6P. Before, some characters clearly had much, much, much better 6Ps than others. However, now they are much more uniform, as everybody's 6P now low crushes on the 4th frame, whereas some characters would low crush much, much earlier, but now everybody's is the same. So now there shouldn't be a situation where some characters can 6P their way out and others can't. Next is counter hit damage. They reworked the way counter hit damage works. So now when you get a big counter hit, they have removed the damage modifiers. It used to be that on a counter hit, you did 10% more baseline damage plus up to another 20% for risk. So that's why in the previous version of the game, a single counter hit could end the entire match, because the multipliers could really, really get crazy, especially if you just ended up blocking something. However, they decided to remove that. There are no longer damage modifiers on counter hits. Instead, the reward is simply the slowdown. So having the slowdown gives you access to bigger combos. So the bigger combo itself is your reward instead of doing basically a TOD. And this is, again, to make the matches last longer and make it to where you're not dying off of one bad guess. And that brings us to our final system mechanic change, and that is the buff to charge attacks. They went ahead and reduced the total number of frames you have to hold back or down in order to trigger a charge attack. It used to be 30 frames, now it is only 25. 25 is low enough that in most cases, all you have to do is a single button press and you'll be able to get your charge attack. So with this change, charge attack should feel much less restrictive and much easier to perform. Soul Badguy. The focus of his changes this time around are to expand his neutral options and return his focus back to being a strike throw mix-up character. He has a new move called the Sidewinder Ignited. It is a follow-up to his heavy DP. Whenever you connect it, you can press forward HS and he will do an additional attack that will send the opponent flying and cause a knockdown. According to the devs, this is a great way to end your combos since it has a nice little knockdown follow-up there, as well as if you do this in the corner, this has a clean hit property, so if you trigger the clean hit, it will bounce them off the wall so you can get follow-ups. Gunflame. Soul's Fireball has been buffed. It now starts up faster and reaches further. It now goes almost full screen, much further than before. This gives him a lot more neutral utility. They also buffed the feint version. When you do the Gunflame feint, you can see he now lunges forward slightly. This is designed to give you more options when you use it as a fake out in the middle of a string. Fafnir has been slightly nerfed. It now causes a tumble instead of a wall bounce. This is part of the universal change of where they don't want characters having super long corner carrying combos, and this is one of those moves that's affected by that universal change. And lastly, they nerfed Bandit RC. If you've played this game at all recently or watched any sort of tournaments, you would know that this is his main form of mix-up, doing a bandit, RCing it, and then either going for the overhead jab or landing quickly and doing a low kick. The developers felt that this was a very, very powerful mix-up. I mean, this worked at high level. It hit everybody. And the developers felt that this was outside of the kind of character that Soul is meant to be, so they have removed it. If you try to do it now, you can no longer get the multiple jabs in the air, which takes away the mix-up of are you going to do multiple jabs or do a low for that mix-up there, so that's gone. So without that mix-up, he will go back to being a strike throw focused character. Kai. The focus of Kai's changes this time around are to shift him away from being Stun Dipper Man and turn him into more of a mind game neutral projectile character. He has a brand new move called the Lightning Strike. It allows him to cause any of his fireballs to explode on command by pressing 214P. You can do it early or late, it's up to you. And the whole purpose of this is to prevent the opponent from jumping over his fireballs or sliding underneath them. His Far S and 2S are both receiving a slight nerf to their recovery. According to the devs, they were both a little bit too safe and a little bit too strong as neutral pokes, so now they're going to be a little bit more risky to just throw out there. And then, as mentioned before, Stun Dipper is a little bit weaker now for multiple reasons. Not to repeat a lot of stuff that we already talked about, but the universal changes to low-profile attacks, this being one of the most notorious low-profile attacks in the game. This is going to see all of those nerfs, the reduced damage, the increased blowback, and the smaller launch height, as well as the PRC changes. So Stun Dipper in general is just not going to be as strong. So again, they want you to focus on his projectile game, as it's going to be harder than ever for the opponent to get away from his fireballs. May's changes this time focus on strengthening the power of her vertical dolphin, as well as toning down the strength of some of her hard to deal with buttons. Starting with her vertical dolphin, it now has a bit of tracking on it. Depending on how far away the opponent is how far it will travel now. The devs felt that this move didn't have enough utility, so now it functions as a pretty decent neutral poke. The horizontal version, also known as Totsugeki, has seen some changes as well. It is now more plus on hit. As you can see, if it connects, it is now +3, and she's right in front of you, so that is a big benefit for her. However, if it is blocked, it is now more negative, and they are less pushed back, so it is easier for her to lose her turn. This nerf is sort of necessary because, as we talked about before, they buffed all charge attacks. All charge attacks come out faster. You now only need to charge for 25 frames instead of 30. So now it's very, very easy to quickly get a Totsugeki out after a single button press. 3K has seen a nerf. It now has a proximity requirement, basically meaning that it is much, much harder to make this move. Plus, as you can see, even from tip range, it is still -8. So this goes in line with all of those low crush changes that we've talked about. All low crushes are seeing massive changes, so the days of doing slide into PRC for big damage is pretty much over, and that is again universal across the board. And lastly, they went ahead and nerfed her 5H. This is one of the most infamous disjointed attacks in the entire game. They went ahead and added more recovery to it. They didn't take away the disjoint, so it's still really good at beating out attacks, but it's going to be a lot harder to just mash this, you know, without a care in the world, because as you can see, it has a lot of recovery now. Axel. Focus of Axel's changes this time around are to expand his overall neutral utility by buffing his special moves. Starting with Winter Mantis. Winter Mantis used to be a command grab, but the devs felt that it wasn't getting enough usage by Axel players, so they went ahead and changed it to be a low attack. So now, even when the opponent is at full screen, they have to watch out for a low, and this low also guard breaks and leaves him plus while pulling them in, so it allows him to keep up the offensive, and if it connects, he still gets a combo opportunity. They also went ahead and buffed Sickle Flash, one of his best ranged attacks. It now just generally recovers faster. As you can see, you can basically start moving right away the moment they block it, so this is just a much better move in general to just throw out, which is very, very good for Axel. Whistling Wind, the Tornado, has also been buffed. They went ahead and increased the projectile speed of the charge version. So as you can see, it travels across the screen much, much quicker, allowing him to either apply pressure or run behind it, or just use any of his other special moves. This is just going to give him a lot more neutral utility. His 2K has been nerfed. This is not a Axel specific thing. This is a universal nerf. This is part of the low profile nerf. It no longer is going to crouch under most attacks. And again, this is just something that is happening to all characters. They're kind of going around and getting rid of most low profiling attacks. His 6K has also received a nerf. It no longer launches the opponent as high as before. As you can see, it now causes that tumble. However, to compensate for this, it now has a larger hitbox, so it can actually hit crouchers now. Chipp. Chipp's changes this time focus on readjusting the power of his Alpha Blades and his Tightrope. Starting with Alpha Blade Horizontal, it now starts up faster. Thanks to this faster startup, it can now combo off of Heavy Slash. However, to balance this, it now works a little bit less effectively as a cross-up. It's a little bit more reactable now. But to offset that, you can also now cancel it into Horizontal Alpha Blade. This canceled version of Alpha Blade has special properties to it, which allow it to immediately transition into the Tightrope. The regular diagonal version of Alpha Blade has seen a slight nerf. It now has adjusted blowback so that it's less viable in combos and has less corner carry. In the air, however, it now combos into Horizontal Alpha Blade for better Oki. The Tightrope Walk has been a bit nerfed. The developers felt that the Tightrope overall was a little too powerful in its current state, so they nerfed the activation of it. When he puts the Tightrope out, he now has more recovery. They felt that the way he retreated and put it up before was a little bit too strong, a little bit too hard to stop. So now you can see that it's a little bit longer before he's able to move. And they went ahead and shortened the duration. According to the devs, they felt that it lasted a little bit too long, especially for how powerful of a mix-up tool it is. So he's going to have to find better ways of casting it without getting punished, and he's going to have to get his mix-ups in sooner if he wants to take full effect of the tightrope. Potemkin. Pot is easily one of the most infamous characters in the entire game, and he is receiving a lot of very big changes to his gameplay. The focus of the changes is to tone down his long-range options, making it more difficult for him to close the distance quickly on his opponents. Starting with the flick. The flick has been nerfed, namely the projectile that it creates. If you flick a fireball, the resulting fireball from the flick does not last as long as before. It now travels slightly forward before dissipating rather quickly. Not only that, a successful flick no longer causes a hard knockdown. Gigantorkai, the wall super, has also been nerfed. Its duration was cut down drastically from roughly 7 seconds to roughly 2 seconds. So as you can see, it does not travel nearly as far as before. Before, he used to be able to cast it and basically walk the opponent all the way to the corner. That's no longer the case. He's going to have to be much closer to get any sort of utility out of this super now. Hammerfall, Pot's #1 way of closing distance quickly on the opponent, has also been nerfed. This move is an armor attack that can very easily eat through opponents' moves and close the distance fast. That's why it is no longer armored against low attacks. If the opponent does a low, it will now counter hit Pot and knock him out of the animation. Pot Buster, Pot's signature attack, has also been nerfed. It is no longer an armor move, so it will no longer eat through attacks randomly. Not only that, it is receiving a lot of nerfs from the system mechanics. Not to retread everything we've already talked about before, but command grabs did see a lot of nerfs from the system itself, namely the fact that you cannot RC them on whiff. So if he whiffs a Pot Buster now, it is going to be a lot more punishable. Command grabs also don't beat regular throws, and probably the biggest thing of all is the PRC change. So if Pot PRCs and then goes into a Pot Buster, it is going to receive the damage penalty from the new RC restrictions. So as you can see, the damage difference between a raw Pot Buster and a PRC Pot Buster is pretty crazy. So this new version of the game, Pot is going to have to be more strategic about working his way in and more strategic about setting up those Pot Busters to get max damage. But it's not all nerfs. He did get a couple of buffs, notably his walk speed. I kind of showed it off a little bit before, but his walk speed has been enhanced. So by simply holding forward, he's going to move forward a little bit faster than before. This is to help him close the distance a little bit more easily, thanks to the nerfs to his other long-range tools. And lastly, to help him out a little bit, they also extended the range of his 6HS. It now hits a little bit further than before. Faust. Faust changes focus on toning down his crouch stance as well as the afro state, as the developers felt they were both a little bit too strong for the opponents to deal with in their current state. However, they are also strengthening the power of his item game. Starting with his items, the donut, the banana, the afro, and the trumpet have all been buffed. Faust can now grab them in midair before they even hit the ground. This is going to give him a lot more utility and control over his items. As long as he can react to them, he's going to be able to more easily get them before the opponent has the chance to interact with them. On top of that, the donut specifically now gives both health and tension, so it's more valuable of an item. And the trumpet has been extra buffed to be tossed closer to Faust. So as you can see, he throws it straight up in the air. He doesn't throw it towards the opponent anymore. So this is going to make it even easier for him to claim it and get his very powerful trumpet offense going. The item super has been buffed. They reduced the recovery on it. So after you throw the items, he recovers much faster. The purpose of this is to be able to get set up more easily off of a knockdown. You can also stock items during the item super by holding the button down. Mix 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 has been buffed. You can now cancel the animation on hit and then block by pressing the S button. This generally just gives you more control over the move of when you land, and specifically it'll give you even more control over when you break the wall in a combo. Bone Crushing Excitement, his reversal has been buffed. It now starts up faster. That's actually my first time seeing Jam's reaction to it. That's pretty funny. But now it is more reliable as a reversal super, as before it had extremely slow startup time. The Afro State has received a nerf. If it is on fire, it will no longer explode if Faust takes damage. And lastly, his crawl stance has been adjusted. The crawling backward stance no longer has a tiny hurt box. As you can see, it will now actually block mid attacks. However, the crawl forward stance allows you to pass under moves very easily. Milia. Milia's changes focus on reducing her combo strength off of stray hits, but increasing the utility of her 5K and her tendon top. Starting with 5K, they've reduced the knockback on it, so now it will be a little bit easier to confirm it into a sweep off of a dash. The tendon top, the S version specifically, has its launch height reduced. They felt that Milia's combo game was a little bit too strong, so this is one of those changes to make her combo game just a little bit weaker due to her being such a powerful mix-up character. However, they reduced the horizontal blowback, so when it does hit, it leaves her a little bit more plus as the character is not blown so far away from her. And the projectile itself now moves faster. Bad Moon. This move has been buffed to have more utility. Usually this is used as a fast overhead near the ground if you TK it. However, if you use it high in the air or off of an air combo, it now has a new property where it will hard knock down the opponent. They cannot tech, meaning that they have to wake up into Milia's very powerful Oki. Iron Savior, also known as the Hair Car, has been nerfed as well, specifically its combo options. Its launch height has been reduced in order to prevent long combos after counter hits. And lastly, Artemis has been nerfed as well. It now descends slower and has more landing recovery. Milia now loses her turn when this attack is blocked, and when it connects, it is a little bit harder to combo off of. These nerfs basically come from the universal change that we mentioned before, where fast, hard to punish moves offered a lot of combo utility. This is just one of those moves that's being affected by that due to its speed and effectiveness. It is just being a little bit weaker on block and when it connects. Zato. Zato's changes this time around are focused on improving the utility of Eddie's new move, the float attack, improving the power of Invite Hell, and limiting the power of some of his counter hit pokes. Starting with his new move, the float. This was a move that got pretty much rejected by the entire community as the worst move in the game. So to counteract that, the devs have decided to buff it. They went ahead and changed all of the trajectories on this attack, namely the K version. Now, if you press K while this is out, or if you negative edge K, I should say, he will chuck Eddie really high up into the air and behind the opponent. So according to the notes, this should make Eddie much more difficult for the opponent to hit and make it much more easy to get them behind the opponent so you can get those sandwiches and get that nice pressure going. Zato's trademark move, Invite Hell, has been buffed. It now comes out faster. It is now fast enough to combo off of 2S on normal hit. Not only that, it got the signature buff that Guilty Gear games always seem to do, like late in their lifespan. It is no longer allowed to leave the screen. So now you can do it directly in the corner and you don't have to worry about trying to space it out. No matter where you are, it's just going to come out regardless of your positioning. Pierce has been slightly nerfed. They went ahead and slowed down the second stab. This is to counteract the fact that Zato, before, if he got a counter hit to S, he could combo into stab, and the stab would corner carry the opponent all the way across the screen into a wall break off of one single counter hit. In order to get rid of that fact, that is no longer the case. The second stab is too slow to actually pick them up in a combo in that situation anymore. However, according to the devs, they also tweaked the numbers a bit so that even though the second stab is slower, Pierce has not lost its effectiveness on block. It is still a strong block string option. Sun Void has also been nerfed. They went ahead and increased the delay between when the super ends and when Eddie can attack in order to make it more easy for the opponent to take their turn back. Basically, they don't want you spending all of your Eddie gauge and then simply just doing the super and starting all over again. However, you can still mind game with a pose after the sword is blocked. Ramlethal. Ram's changes focus on limiting the power of her mid-screen corner carry, increasing the combo power of her giant swing, and increasing the Oki potential of her S sword throw. Starting with the giant swing, it now comes out faster. Thanks to the fact that it comes out faster, you can now combo it off of HS. Because of the fact that it is now comboable off of a normal button, it has had its damage adjusted, but this should give her better neutral confirms in general. Undo, her new move, the Rock Pillar, they adjusted the knockback and reduced the recovery so that it works better at neutral. Her S sword toss has been reworked. It no longer causes a wall bounce on hit, but now instead triggers a hard knockdown. The point of this change is to give her better Oki options. Once they wake up into the sword, Ram gets to pressure them for free with the fact that the sword is about to explode on them. So it's kind of like she gets her corner pressure mid-screen now. And for both of her launcher attacks, her Daduro and her Rekka, both of them had their launch heights reduced. Again, to go into that universal change of just lowering the overall power level and strength of combos, especially corner carry combos. Ram was a big character for that. She could very easily carry you across the whole screen, and these changes are designed to prevent that, to kind of lower the overall craziness of hit confirms in this game. Leo, his changes focus around improving the strength of his Brunhilde stance, as well as limiting his options for entering the stance, since he has so many more ways of mixing you up once he gets his stance going. So to start things off, when he's in his stance, he now has a new move. More specifically, as a new option, whenever he's in stance, you can press up to jump. So he now has this sort of little hop that he can do while he's in stance. And this is just designed to give him even more mix-up options. You can jump and do a cross-up attack. You can neutral jump and hit on the same side. You can jump away. You can even jump in. You can back turn far away, jump in, and then get your stance started from there. So needless to say, he's already very hard to block. This is going to make him even more difficult to block. And if that wasn't enough, they went ahead and added jump cancel options to the stance. P, K, and S can all be jump canceled on block. So he's just going to have a ton of ways of mixing the opponent up. You're going to be able to get really creative with this. Turbulence had its pushback reduced on block. The devs felt that with the pushback that it had before, it was too easy to backdash away, allowing him to freely get into stance without being pressured. But thanks to the amount of pushback it has now, it's going to be really hard for him to just freely go into stance whenever he feels like it. His H flash kick, or HDP, has increased recovery. Because of this, it is harder for him to get a meaty turbulence on the opponent's wake up and enter his stance from there. However, he can still at least get a close slash S to continue some pressure on the opponent as they get up. And lastly, his heavy slash has been nerfed. They lowered the attack level, so it's more likely to lose to other attacks and it's less likely to trade, and it no longer combos into turbulence. So again, he's going to have to be more creative about getting into his stance, but once he's in the stance, his mix-ups are much, much stronger and scarier than before. Nagoriyuki. Nago's changes focus on his brand new move, the Yuki Moyoi, as well as giving him more options for controlling his blood gauge. Starting with his new move, it is 214S, and he sticks his sword into the ground to create a low-hitting projectile. As you can see, this has a lot of range, and yes, the opponent actually does have to block this low. Not only that, by doing this, there are a lot of benefits. First of all, you enter a sort of mini install state. You see that Nago now has like a sort of shadow over his face to signal that he's in an install. That is because the moment you activate this move, it automatically puts Nago at level 3 blood. So you no longer have to try to hit some sort of balance of doing certain moves to hit level 3. This move will automatically put you there. And you can tell when it's about to wear off because the blue aura over his helmet will slowly turn red, signaling that you're about to run out of time and the mini install state is about to be over. So besides the massive benefit of instantly going to level 3, it also has the extra benefit of, while you're in this stance, you cannot add any extra blood to your blood gauge. As you can see, no matter what I do, the blood gauge is not going up. So during that time, you can pretty much just go crazy and just do as much offense as you want. However, that's not to say there's no downside. While you're in this stance, even though the blood is not going up during the stance, you have to pay for all the blood spent once the stance is over. So if you go crazy and the stance ends, you're going to instantly pop once it's over. Now, this can be prevented in the usual way. If you're in this stance and you connect blood-sucking universe, you can still lower your blood gauge. His heavy slash, crouch heavy slash, and 6H have all been buffed. They now recover more blood gauge on block. So if the opponent blocks any of these attacks, you now get a little bit more blood back than before. Again, this is designed to help him more effectively manage his blood level. However, it should also be noted that when his blood gauge reaches level 3, he now takes 9% more damage, so be careful. And speaking of being careful, Blood Rage has become even more dangerous. They extended the amount of time that you are in Blood Rage to make it more punishing. So if you fail to manage your blood properly, there's a good chance that you are going to be instantly killed. And lastly, his command grab has been slightly nerfed. It no longer removes all of his blood. It now removes a healthy chunk instead. So now if you want to get back to no blood, you're going to have to land more of his buttons, and you can't just count on the command grab to put you back at 0. Giovana. Gio's changes this time around focus on many small adjustments to change her overall playstyle. Starting with her powered up state. Her powered up defensive state that she gets from having 50% meter and 100% meter has received a buff. Now you get to keep the powered up state even after you spend the meter. So let's say you get 50 bar and then you spend it on an RC. For a few seconds afterwards, you still keep the powered up advantage even though you spent the meter. This is so that you don't just have to sit on the meter if you want to keep your power up. 2S, her multi-hitting low poke now moves forward during the animation. This helps as a neutral poke and has even better momentum now off of a dash. This also makes it easy to combo into standing heavy slash. Her DP has been buffed as well. They shrunk the hurt box and made it work better as an anti-air. Her 214K has seen a buff and a nerf. The buff to it is now completely safe on block. It is no longer punishable. However, to make up for that, it has a bit less knockback, or I should say her buttons have less knockback now. So if she does this, it's going to be harder for her to retreat. That is a pretty common strategy with Giovana, is to end her turn with something like a H and then do this. And then usually she would have enough pushback to be able to backdash or jump or something. But now the pushback has been reduced, so it's harder for her to escape after losing her turn with 214K. Next up, her dive super. The devs felt that this super was a little bit too strong and a little bit too hard to stop, so they increased the recovery on both whiff and on block. So if the opponent whiffs this, they're going to be easier to punish, and if it is blocked, it is actually now punishable on block. So if you do this move, you have to do it as a read, and you can't just throw it out whenever you feel like. Anji. Anji has several adjustments to Fujin and its follow-ups. Starting with Fujin itself. The charged version of Fujin can no longer be canceled into any of the other 236 moves. So if you commit to the spin version, which has the parry in the middle, you can't cancel it into another spin. Once you do the spin, you've committed and you have to just finish out one of the Rekka options. However, to compensate this, all of the follow-up Rekka options have been buffed. So if you do the charged fusion, you will now do a special version of all of the follow-ups. Starting with Nagiha, the sweep. As you can see, it visually looks different. You get sort of that little beam effect now. The enhanced version pushes the opponent back further and makes it harder to punish. However, the normal version had its launch height reduced, making it harder to extend combos. The overhead follow-up has been nerfed. The opponent now quickly techs up, making it more difficult for him to get any Oki off of it. However, the charged version now causes a ground bounce, giving him the opportunity to follow up with combos. 2HS has been buffed. It now moves further forward and has less pushback in order to give him more offensive cancel options. Ko has received a nerf to its combo blowback scaling. Basically, this means it's going to be harder for this move to carry the opponent to the corner. And lastly, the spin has been nerfed. This is a very difficult move to deal with due to the fact that it can literally spin through just about any attack. Because of this, the devs have added special damage proration. If the move actually does spin through an attack, the following attack will be heavily scaled. They said specifically it is very easy to get a close slash, which is a very high damaging starter in this game. So because of the fact that it is very easy to get a close slash off of just about anything that the opponent does, that damage is now going to be prorated accordingly. Ino is seeing some adjustments to her air dash to enhance her jump-ins and her Oki, as well as improving some of her buttons. Starting with her air dash, she now has a special input that she can do. She can either press up or down during the air dash to change the trajectory. So here you see like her regular air dash, but if you do air dash and up, she does sort of a semi float. And if you hit a button during this, you can add that momentum to your pokes. You can also press down to float downward at an angle. And if you hit down as you're doing this, you can hit P and give yourself a fast fall where you cut off your air momentum. HS has been buffed and now has faster startup, so it can now combo cleanly off of both bar S and 2S. So now at neutral, she has better options for hit confirming. And because this can combo into the H version of stroke, she now has a very clean conversion that she can get off of a simple poke at neutral. And lastly, the blowback on both Chemical Love and Mad Love have been adjusted to prevent strong corner carry, as the developers felt that her corner carry potential was a little bit too high for a character with such strong mix-up potential. Goldlewis. Goldlewis's changes this time around are focused on improving his neutral and his buttons, while toning down the power of Behemoth Typhoon and the security gauge. Starting with his far S, this button has been buffed. They increased the active frames and the momentum. So now when you do this after a dash, it will travel further and last longer, which will just make it a much better and more effective neutral poke. This is also true of his 2K, which is a low. So these are just going to be two very strong buttons to throw out at neutral. 2S had its frontal hurt box removed. So now this will function as, again, a much better poke at neutral, and it should be less likely to lose to other buttons. Next up, Behemoth Typhoon. Yes, the meme move itself has been nerfed. It now does less damage on hit, and its damage proration has been nerfed as well, meaning if you start a combo with it, it's just going to do less damage in general. So basically, they don't want him just automatically deleting you off of getting hit by a Behemoth Typhoon. Not just that, but canceling a Behemoth into a Behemoth now costs you 100% of your security gauge. And lastly, the blowback on hit has been adjusted to limit the reward on successful mix-ups with Behemoth. So all in all, they still want Behemoth to be strong, but they don't want it to be as overwhelmingly strong as it was in the previous patch. Next up, Skyfish has been a bit nerfed. It now has a higher minimum bullet value. So before, when he would shoot this, he could shoot it for just like 1 second and then put the gun away, which made it very hard to punish, even if you predicted. But now, even if you don't hold the bullet down, he fires a pretty good amount of bullets, which just makes the move a little bit more risky to just throw out there. And lastly, Thunderbird. The drone has also been nerfed. You can probably tell just from what you saw right there. It does not travel as far as it used to. So level 1 barely travels at all, but now level 2 has been nerfed as well. If you throw out a level 2 drone, it no longer goes the full distance of the screen, allowing him to just chase you down. He now has to wait for level 3, which is the full bar, to get a long-range drone. But even at level 3, it doesn't travel as long as it used to. Jack-O. Jack-O's changes this time around are focused on improving her servant toss as well as her servant gauge management. Starting with the servant toss, it now has a new input. Usually when you throw the servant, she throws it directly at the opponent. However, if you hold the button down now, she will throw it high into the air, where it'll land behind the opponent. This, of course, being the most optimal position to get her offense started. Countdown has been buffed. When you activate Countdown now, it no longer costs you extra servant gauge. This means you can now use the explosion to your advantage to set up more servants or combos or whatever you want to do. 6HS has been buffed. It now sets up a hard knockdown when used in a combo. So now that the opponent cannot tech, this will give you plenty of time to set up a minion on their wake up. 2K has been hit by the universal nerf. This move is a very well-known low crush. However, due to the universal changes to low profiling moves, 2K no longer has low crush properties. This is also true of her slide 2D. It has also been hit with the universal nerfs. So now it is going to have damage proration and combo blowback limitations, making it harder to launch the opponent, as well as damage penalties when used with a PRC. Happy Chaos. This is the big one, possibly the most infamous character in the entire game. And as you probably have already heard by now, the focus of his changes are to completely rework him as a character. If you are a Chaos player before, you're basically going to have to relearn him because he doesn't play anything like he did before. Starting with HS at the ready. So if you don't know, Happy Chaos had a very powerful attack called at the ready. This was basically where if you pressed heavy, he would pull his gun out. And he had two different versions. He had a 236, where when he pulled the gun out, it puts you in block stun. And then he had the H version where just pressing H, he could pull the gun out without any sort of animation. And one of the massive parts of Chaos's strength was simply the fact that you could do a button and then go into at the ready. So let's say that I just did 5S right there and I whiffed it, right? I could whiff it and then do at the ready and shoot you for trying to whiff punish me. But as you can probably tell from what's happening right now, you can't do that anymore. No animation version of at the ready has been deleted from the game. So now in order for him to go into at the ready, he has to actually pull out his gun. And if he's in a block string, he has to pull out the gun. He can't just be like medium and then shoot you with the gun and then continue, you know, dust, shoot you with the gun, continue. He has to have the gun out before he can do those things. It should also be mentioned they nerfed at the ready even further by the fact that you can no longer jump. If you jump during at the ready, he puts his gun away, so jumping mix-ups with the at the ready are now gone. The reticle system. Chaos's built-in system where he locks onto you with a reticle and shoots you with the gun has been entirely reworked. You can no longer fire the gun until he basically aims at them. Right now, I'm gonna pull out the gun and mash. You can see I'm not shooting. So when the gun is not focused, you literally cannot shoot them. This, of course, is a massive, massive nerf and massive change from before, because before, as long as they were in block stun, the gun would auto lock onto them. So you could do like this and then just start shooting right away. Again, that's not possible because first of all, you have to pull out the gun, and then after pulling out the gun, you cannot fire for quite some time. So again, his old method of play is completely gone. Next up is Steady Aim. Steady Aim has also been reworked. It has a similar function to at the ready where the gun cannot be fired until it actually focuses. Now, it focuses faster than at the ready, so it functions as a good range poke, according to the devs. However, when this version of at the ready connects, the opponent is launched much, much lower, making it harder to get big, crazy corner carry combos. However, it's not all nerfs. He did get some new stuff to play with too. When he's in at the ready stance, he now has a new attack that he can do from this stance. If you press up or down, he'll now aim at one of these portals and do a ricochet shot. So this is a new type of attack that he didn't have before, and I'm sure people will find some sort of interesting use for it. Reloading has been nerfed. Let me go ahead and spin some bullets here. When you reload the gun, it is no longer possible to reload a single bullet. When you reload, he reloads everything at once. This means, again, this is a big nerf because you can't spend a single bullet and then use the reload to sort of, you know, frame trap. So especially if your bullets are low, you can't do like a button, reload, and then a button again. Stuff like that is pretty much not possible because reloading, first of all, takes longer, so you're more unsafe. And then again, if you're missing more than one bullet, you're always going to reload every bullet one time. It's not up to you anymore how many bullets you reload. And not just that, they nerfed his super, Deus Ex Machina. It no longer refills your bullets. This was a massive part of the character's gameplay and kit in general, was, you know, spend all your bullets on a mix-up, get the hit, and then just super, preferably super them through the wall, get positive bonus and all your bullets back and just start over. And as you can tell, that again is no longer an option. If you want to get your bullets back, you really do have to manually reload every single time. It is no longer possible to just get your bullets back by spending your meter. Next up is Curse. This has been heavily nerfed. Curse is pretty much nothing of what it used to be. Whatever you thought you knew about Curse, just throw it out the window because the old Curse is gone. So new Curse is a projectile. As you can see, it actually has block stun and can be blocked. And as you can also see, it does not curse on block. It literally only curses on hit. So you have to actively connect the attack in order to curse people now. Not only that, Curse no longer bounces. So the days of chaos retreating at the round start and throwing the curse and it bouncing into you and then you just not getting to play, that's not really going to be a thing, because if he throws Curse from too far away, it just hits the ground and disappears. So no more bouncing. It just dissolves on the floor. It's gone. And if all that wasn't enough, Curse doesn't even affect aim anymore. It strictly only affects damage. It does not allow you to shoot faster or be more accurate in any way. It's literally just about the damage, so you'll do more damage if they're cursed. But as you can see, I'm mashing the button and I'm not shooting any faster, so Curse no longer has anything to do with aiming. And lastly, Scapegoat has been reworked just like everything else. When you use Scapegoat, it does not last very long, for one thing, and then for the rest, it will absorb attacks, but it has less hit stun when it does. So this is designed to help him with his resource management, but it's not going to be as good as it was originally. And just in general, they now want this character to be a full-on resource management character. If he wants to have any sort of, you know, lockdown potential, you have to actually like really strongly manage both your concentration and your bullets, because it is a lot harder to shoot opponents than it was before. Baiken's adjustments this time focus on expanding her grounded neutral game. Starting with her 2S, the attack level has increased, so that means it's just a better poke overall, which this is already a very good poke. On hit, it can now combo into her crouching heavy slash. Her crouching heavy slash has been turned into a sweep, so that means as long as you connect this, you can immediately get a hard knockdown on the opponent and rush in for some Oki mix-ups. Her 2P has had its attack level decreased, but this was in order to help it connect with 6K. So now 6K will combo more effectively, giving her better combo options off of her hit confirms. Kabari has been buffed. The HS version specifically comes out much faster than before. This was designed to give her a better long-range poke. One thing that Baiken is pretty weak against is zoning, so this should definitely help her out with that, being able to nab you from so far away so quickly. However, to compensate the range and speed of it, The follow-up was nerfed so that it is no longer a hard knockdown, giving her worse Oki, but you can offset that by the fact that her 2HS is now a sweep, so those two things kind of balance each other out. Testament. Testament's changes this time around focus on improving their ranged game while also limiting their up-close pressure options. So, starting with Unholy Diver, also known as the Crow now has a faster startup. It used to start up in 21 frames and now starts up in 16, so it just generally comes out a lot faster, which means it's going to be a lot easier for you to stain the opponent. Now, to balance this out, the Crow is no longer plus on block, it is now negative. So Testament does lose their turn when you do the Crow from up close. So be careful, as you can actually get tagged for trying to swing after a Crow, but due to the new speed, you are going to be able to genuinely stain the opponent more often, more easily. And speaking of stain, it has been pretty drastically changed. You can now apply stain twice. So if an opponent is stained and you hit them with the Crow a second time, you apply a second layer of stain, and you can see that the stain animation itself changes. You can see a little bit of black in there inside the purple, signifying that they are actually double stained. And yes, a double stained opponent does actually blow up twice. So if an opponent is double stained, that just gives you double the opportunity to combo them and double the opportunity to pressure them. Now, this does come with a caveat of a slight nerf to regular stain. Because double stain exists and it's easier to stain now, regular stain is a little bit weaker. As you can see, the pop-up is smaller, and I believe the frames on block are a little bit less as well. So overall, regular stain kind of took a little bit of a hit, but the fact that you can double stain, according to the devs, is supposed to be the new focus of their game plan. So if you do get that double stain going, you can get some very big damage and some very strong offense going. Next up is a nerf to Grave Reaper H version. This is no longer plus on block. They have increased the recovery. Instead of being +2, it is now -2, and it launches the opponent lower, making it harder to get combos off of. So all in all, the devs just really want you to focus on getting those stains. Bridget's changes focus on a brand new mechanic that they added in to her rolls. Her rolling movement now has a brand new ability. You can do her roll even if there is no yo-yo setup. This is a brand new unique roll. It does not have any sort of a hitbox, but it acts as a sort of unique jump. Think of it like a sort of specialized short hop. You can attack out of it and even do pretty much anything. You can jump out of it, set up yo-yos. It basically is designed to give her way more utility and way more options of getting her yo-yos set up in an interesting way. Command Normal 4 has been buffed. That is the follow-up to 2S and 5S. It no longer sends the opponent flying away. They now spin out in place, allowing you to get combos off of her special moves such as Kickstart My Heart or Stop and Dash. Stop and Dash, the yo-yo placement move, however, has been nerfed. The developers felt this move was a little bit too strong. It was a little bit too easy for Bridget to get you in the corner, put this move out, and just continuously pressure you into very, very strong, very hard to react to mix-ups. And because of that, they had added more recovery to it. When she does Stop and Dash now, she is much more negative, so it's going to be very hard for her to do this and actually keep her turn. So instead of just doing this right away, they want you to be more creative and use the new flip in more tricky ways to get set up, rather than just trying to set up right in front of your opponent's face. And lastly, Kickstart My Heart. The rollerblades has been nerfed, It is no longer possible to do it from a long range and make it plus. Due to the enhanced recovery, it is going to be much more unsafe in almost every situation, so it's going to be a little bit harder for her to get in from long distances using this move. Sin this time got a pretty exciting rework to his stamina and eating mechanics. Basically, they're trying to make him more similar to how he played back in Guilty Gear Xrd. His special move, Still Growing, also known as the eating mechanic, was something that most players deemed pretty useless and no one ever really liked the way it worked. He would pull out a random piece of food and eat it and get a random power-up for like 2 seconds. Nobody ever really liked that, so they basically deleted that from the game. Now when you eat food, it directly affects your stamina bar. All the food does the same thing. It's not random anymore. It directly affects how much stamina you regain. So if I do a beak driver and a follow-up here, you can see that it cost me 1 bar of stamina, and it's taking a pretty long while to get that bar back. Now that's where the new eating mechanic comes in. If I spend that same bar and then eat some food, it will not only cut down the amount of time it takes for the bar to start replenishing, but the bar itself will replenish noticeably faster. So basically, they want you to find time during the match to sneak in some food, whether that's like at a lull at neutral or after you score a knockdown. They want you to look for times to sneak in some food. That way you get your stamina back more quickly and you can go on the offense more regularly. In order to balance out the fact that eating gives you more access to stamina, they have nerfed the stamina-based attacks, however. Each stamina move is a little bit less powerful than it was before. The Beak Driver follow-up specifically had its blowback reduced to make it harder to get combos on hit. The Hoof Stomp follow-up no longer wall bounces. And Elphelt, of course, is following the same rules as every other low-profiling move in the game. Is going to be doing less damage, and it is less likely to pick up combos as well. That's just the new direction of the game. They don't want these low crushes being too powerful anymore. And speaking of things being too powerful, Ride the Lightning has also been nerfed due to the fact that this super can basically wall break from just about anywhere. It has been nerfed to no longer be invincible, so you cannot wake up with this anymore, but they are letting you keep the fact that it will break the wall from just about anywhere on screen. Bedman. Focus of Bedman's changes this time around is to expand their neutral and block string options by buffing Call Zero. Call Zero has been heavily buffed. The developers have said that they felt the move was not being utilized very often by Bedman players, so they wanted to give it more utility. Instead of simply delaying error calls now, it actually powers them up. So if I do the lightning error right here, you can see how it zaps like it normally does. But if I do that same error and then buff it with Call Zero, it now does a much stronger version that actually launches them. This is true of all error attacks. So every error can now be powered up without the use of having to go into the install. But keep in mind, they do note here that the installed versions of the errors are still stronger, but now you have like a middle ground. So it's like the super version is like tier 3 and the Call Zero version is like tier 2. So kind of like some other characters we've talked about, this new utility is meant to be charged up during like a lull in neutral, or like when you get a knockdown. They want you to basically power up your moves and just have better access to better errors. Next up, the Beyblade. Beyblade has been buffed. This has one of the better errors attached to it, the big explosion one that you can run behind, but it's one of the harder errors to set up because the Beyblade animation is so gigantic. Normally you have to do Beyblade RC just to get this one set up. So to counteract that, they gave you the ability to cancel the Beyblade animation by holding the button down. So if you hold the button down, Bedman now does a very short spin and recovers quickly. So this gives you the ability to set up this error and even power it up without being completely and totally unsafe. Now, on the adjustment side, their JS has been nerfed. The dev said that this jump button was a little bit too strong, so they have weakened it just a little bit. Its horizontal hitbox has been reduced, and its draw-in potential has been reduced. So it's a little bit harder to draw in the opponent from far away and get a close slash, which means it's more likely that Bedman will lose their turn. And because the JS has a worse hitbox in front of it, it's going to lose more often in air-to-air scenarios, as this was a button that beat other air-to-airs pretty freely. And lastly, JD is also seeing some nerfs. This was a very powerful mix-up tool. The devs felt it was a little bit too powerful, so it can no longer be jump canceled. The old setup before was to do this and then basically cancel it into something else the moment it's blocked. That's no longer possible. If it's blocked, Bedman now completely loses their turn. But if it connects, it actually does lead to combo opportunities. Asuka. That man is another character that has been completely reworked and is basically a completely different character in this version of the game. According to the devs, they felt that his offense was a little too one-sided and that his offense lasted a little bit too long. So in this version of the game, they've redesigned him into a character who gets to go on the offensive for a little bit, but then is forced to back off for a little while. In order to make this happen, they basically heavily nerfed his mana as a resource. So in the previous version of the game, he had many ways of getting his mana back. If you don't know, every time he casts a spell, that costs him mana. In the previous version of the game, he had 3 different ways of mana charging to get it back. One was resourceless, the green version. Yellow version cost you your attention and got it back pretty quick. Red version cost you your own health and got your mana back almost instantly. Both the yellow and red versions have been completely removed. You cannot use your health or tension to get your mana back. You can only do the green one, and the green one is extremely slow, so it's going to be very hard to maintain your mana in an actual match going forward. Not only that, mana recovery cards have been toned down and decreased. Each deck only has 1 mana card in it now, so when you pop super and you look for a mana card, it's going to be harder to find because there's now only 1 in each deck. On top of that, the cost of all attack cards has gone up, so just in general, he's going to run out of mana faster because every single card is more expensive. In order to sort of counterbalance this slightly, they also adjusted how the mana cash out system works. So normally in the original version, you could not cast a spell that you couldn't afford. So for example, this red card on the left, the fireball, this costs more than the amount of mana that I currently have. Originally, in the previous version, that would mean I just can't do it at all. But now you actually are allowed to spend what you don't have, and you will manually put yourself in burnout. So this is, it's more of a buff than a nerf, because now you can spend all of your mana and manually wait for it to come back, similar to like characters like Happy Chaos, Zato, Jacko. Basically, they're making Asuka play more similar to other resource characters who have to expend it all and wait for it to come back. Long story short, they don't want you keeping your mana full anymore. But that's not to say that it's all nerfs. He did actually get some pretty nice and pretty effective buffs, in my opinion, starting with the new bookmark. Bookmark now replaces cards instead of emptying out slots. Before, let's say I didn't want that water cube. If I shuffled it, it would just delete it and I would have an empty space and I would have to shuffle a second time to fill it with a new card. However, with the buff that he received, you can simply just change it to a new card all with one motion. This gives you much better control over your hand and helps you decide what cards you actually want to be carrying around with you. Moving on, he also got 2 new moves. The first one being Synthesize. If you press down P or down K, you will now summon a staff. Staves are no longer cards, so they are, first of all, they're not going to be cluttering up your deck, and second of all, you can summon them whenever you want. So if you just say, I want the speed staff and that's all I want, down P while you're in deck 1, and you can have the speed staff all day. It's up as much as you want. You can even re-summon it. You can just sit here and summon it as much as you want. So that is also a massive buff. You have access to staves anytime you want, as long as you want. It does cost mana, of course, so you will run out of mana if you keep doing it and you don't want to waste your mana, but the fact that you have access to it is really good. Though I will say they did nerf it a little bit. Staves last for half the amount of time. They disappear pretty quick, but that doesn't really matter because you can bring it back. And also, Speed Staff was nerfed. It no longer guard breaks. They took the guard break from the Speed Staff and gave it to the Slow Staff. The Slow Staff is now the one that guard breaks. His next new move is the Empty Spell. Anytime he has an empty slot, or if he's burned out, basically any situation where he's not allowed to cast a spell, he now does this short-range runic projectile. So this is a new move that he never had before, and basically it's just there to help him as a poke. If you're burned out, you now have at least something to end your block strings with, so that's pretty nice. So you can do like something like that. Just basically, when he's burned out, he's not completely helpless, so that is a pretty big buff. The move itself is not that great, however. It is negative on block. It can't be canceled into anything, and on hit, it doesn't launch. It simply forces the opponent to tumble. And lastly, his 6HS, his overhead. The devs felt that this move was too strong, so they removed its overhead properties, and it is now just a mid. To make up for the fact that it is, this character's so funny, to make up for the fact that it's no longer overhead, it does come out a little bit faster, so this is going to help with his combo game. He should be able to more easily get his 6H in air combos. Johnny's changes are focused around enhancing the power of his neutral and improving his overall control. Starting with Deal S. The S version of Deal has been buffed. Johnny now throws the card further forward. You see, he throws it so far it actually goes off the screen. The purpose of this is to make it harder for the opponent to retreat at long distances. 6HS has had its range buffed. It now hits from very far away and actually launches on hit and can even combo into his super on normal hit. They also buffed the range on 2S and now hits from further away, giving him even more neutral control than before. They also went ahead and buffed his dash. You can now actually cancel his dash into special moves. And lastly, Misfiner has been nerfed. It no longer causes a slowdown effect on counter hit. The devs felt that this move was a bit too strong against projectile characters, so in order to let it still keep its utility but make it a little bit weaker, you no longer get that big cash out on a counter hit. Elphelt's changes this time around are focused on expanding the utility of her fireball and her overhead, while also making it a little bit harder for her to loop her mix-ups continuously. Starting with her fireball, Miss Charlotte, the 236S and 236H version have a new mechanic. You can now hold the trigger to perform a second attack. Instead of it just being a single shot, it becomes a two-hit attack. Both the startup and the follow-up both deal damage. If you do this from up close, it leaves her very, very plus. They also went ahead and buffed her Rekka overhead, if you can believe it. If you block the first part of the Rekka, the overhead part now jails on block, meaning that you can no longer backdash or DP. So characters with reversals, once they get to this point right here, get mixed the same as anybody else. On the nerf side, Nailed It is no longer a hard knockdown. Before, if she opens you up with her Rekka, she could end the Rekka with H, hard knock you down, and then run up to you and just start mixing you again. Now that this is no longer a hard knockdown, that is not the case. Her Lariat has also been buffed. They went ahead and unified its frame data on block. No matter what distance you do it from, it is now always going to be the same when the opponent blocks it. Whether you do it from point blank range or max distance, it's just going to be -4, and it's also going to have the same amount of pushback regardless of where you did it, to make the move a little bit more easy to use to get in close. However, to compensate for this, if it connects on hit, it sends the opponent flying further away from her. And lastly, Bomb Bomb Chocolate. Her cross-up attack has been nerfed. They felt that this move was a little bit too powerful and a little bit too hard to stop, so they decreased its movement speed as well as the distance that it travels. So it no longer crosses up unless she is close to the opponent, but even then, she moves a lot more slowly, so it's going to be easier to react to it with either buttons or simply just blocking it. Abba. Abba's changes in this version are seeing a bit of a rework to the way she uses the jealousy gauge, as well as the strength between her normal and jealous forms. Starting with her standard state, the jealous gauge has been reduced at round start from 50 to 25. This means you're going to have to work a bit harder to build up some jealousy before going into jealous rage and trying to mount an offense. Her HS has seen a few nerfs. It now is a bit harder to follow up with combos, even on counter hit. Bonding and Dissolving, the key attack, has been also nerfed. It used to be +2 on block. It is now -2, meaning she now loses her turn. Not only that, it pushes the opponent away. So it's no longer possible to gain gauge and be plus at the same time. It sort of returns the match back to neutral once this is blocked. For Jealous Rage, this is a big one. Once Jealous Rage is over and she enters the return to normal animation, she cannot block. This means you are now at risk of being punished if you run out of Jealous Gauge near the opponent. According to the devs, they want you to now be more creative with your jealousy, and they want jealous mode to be a little bit more risky. So now to get out of jealousy safely, you're going to be forced to either end it early or connect Bonding and Dissolving. If you do end it early, they also reduce the amount of jealousy you get for exiting the stance on purpose. It used to be 50, it is now 25. So again, they're making her more of a finite resource character and just making the jealousy gauge a little bit more harder to maintain. She's also receiving a nerf to the key super. It is now less plus on block. As you can see from this distance, it's only +6. So it's keeping its plus frames, but from a long distance, it's going to be harder now for her to pop this super and then just immediately run and pressure you, because it's not as plus as it was before. Slayer. The focus of Slayer's changes this time around is to improve the feel of his controls while adjusting some of the power of his mix-ups. Starting with his dash, it is now possible to cancel his dash animation into special moves, giving his overall neutral a different feel and different utility. His 6HS has been buffed. They want it to be a sort of powerful pseudo mix-up tool. So depending on how you condition the opponent, 6HS will now have different properties. If the opponent stand blocks it, it'll basically be punishable on block. But if you condition them to duck and they block it while crouching, it becomes plus and he keeps his turn. So basically, they want you to use this as another sort of mix-up option. They want you to condition the opponent to block low, and then set them up to block this, that way you can keep your turn. As for his other mix-ups, they went ahead and buffed the low sweep out of his stance. If you do the low sweep now, it launches the opponent higher on hit, even on normal hit, and you can combo into 2K. To combat this a little bit, they went ahead and nerfed the overhead follow-up. It starts up a little bit slower, making it more reactable and more easy to block for the opponent. Mappa Hunch, everybody's favorite lunging attack, has also been nerfed. They took away its ability to be plus if spaced from max range. No matter how you space it out now, it's more likely to be negative, and he's more likely to always lose his turn, even if you do it from max distance. And lastly, 2HS, the Stomp, has also been nerfed. The devs felt that this move was far too powerful in its previous iteration. It leads to massive damage and is very hard to tag. That's why they removed the lower body invincibility, so it'll actually lose to low attacks now. Dizzy. Dizzy's changes this patch revolve around buffing her fish and changing the properties of her Michael Sword. Starting with her fish, on top of being able to still summon the low and the high version, you get 2 extra versions of each call now if you hold a button down during the summoning. If you hold S, the fish will spawn behind Dizzy, creating sort of a protective barrier before it eventually goes off to attack. And if you hold H, the fish will sort of lunge at the opponent and attack them more quickly, even from far away. So now she just has better projectile options that you can sort of mix up to keep the opponent guessing from any distance. Her JH got buffed. It now has a better lower hurt box. It now functions just overall as a better jump button. It can now even hit crouching opponents during an IAD. Her sweep is one of her best pokes. It's one of the best sweeps in the entire game. So they did nerf it just a little bit. They added more recovery on whiff due to just how powerful of a poke it is. They felt it was a little too strong before, so now if you whiff it, she's a little bit more vulnerable. The S version of Michael Sword has been nerfed. It no longer gives a hard knockdown on hit. It now gives a tumble instead, and the opponent is able to tech. So you are no longer able to set up meaty ice on their wake up like you could before. The developer said they felt that was a little bit too strong. Now instead you have time to set up one of the fish or one of the arrows. Michael Sword H has been both nerfed and buffed at the same time. It starts up slower now, so it takes even longer to come out than before. But the trade-off is that it is better on block. When the opponent blocks it, it is actually 0. So you're basically sending them back full screen, doing a lot of chip damage, and then you're left at neutral. So this is sort of a get off of me tool now, just forcing the opponent back into the position that Dizzy wants them to be in. So overall, I would say it's more of a buff than anything. And lastly, Dizzy's ice has been soft buffed by the new mechanics and the way burst and everything works. If the opponent is frozen, they now receive much less burst gauge than they did before. Much less. If you didn't know, in the previous version, when you froze the opponent, it would give them an insane amount of burst, but as you can see, it's giving them basically nothing. So that is a huge buff to her, because before you were basically, by playing the character, you were just feeding your opponent burst. So the fact that she's not doing that is a pretty massive buff. Venom. Venom's changes this time around revolve around improving his options on the opponent's block, as well as increasing some of the recovery on his ranged attacks. Starting with Q5, they have adjusted the attack level on the held version. It now is even more plus than before, so they recommend using it on opponents who are conditioned to block a lot. And on hit, it actually launches higher to give a better reward for combos. The rebound effect on both 2H and 2D has been adjusted. If you hit a ball with 2D, it now goes up at an angle to serve as a strong anti-air option. If you use 2H, it does the same thing as it did before, but now it moves faster. JD has been buffed on hit. It can now more easily connect into 2K. However, to make up for this, it is no longer a gapless transition into H Carcass. And lastly, Stinger has been nerfed. They felt that it was a bit too strong of a projectile. It had very little recovery and was very safe on block. So both the advantage on block and the whiff recovery have been increased to make it more of a risky fireball. Unika's changes in this patch revolve around enhancing her block string options and giving her more ways to use her unique super weapons free. Starting with her 6HS. 6HS now does a short-range projectile attack. This gives her more block string options and ways of entering her powered-up mode and using her powered-up special moves. Weapons Free, also known as the coolest super in the game, is notably very, very hard to actually activate because it has to hit the opponent when they are standing. Well, it starts up faster now, so you can actually combo it from a standing far slash as well as a 6P. Her top attack, also known as the overhead, has seen a buff. It now causes a hard knockdown if you hit the powered up version on an airborne opponent. This gives it more utility as a combo ender and also gives you more ways of getting your mix-ups going. And lastly, her DP, possibly the most annoying DP in the entire game, has been nerfed. Usually this DP is very, very hard to punish because it has huge range and it's 2 hits. The part where she raises the weapon and fires the weapon are 2 individual hits, so that made it pretty hard to punish it. Now, the second part, the part where she fires the weapon, cannot hit standing opponents. It can only hit airborne opponents. So this makes it much, much easier for the opponent to actually punish when they know it's going to happen. If they want to hit you with this DP, they actually have to hit you with the part where she raises the gun, because the second part is now extremely punishable. And last but not least, Lucy, a character that everybody's been wanting to see buffed for the longest time, and her adjustments are all focused around improving her pokes and her offense in general. Starting with her far S and her 2S. They both now have a vacuum effect on them, so even if you hit them from max range, it will literally pull the opponent closer to you. This will make her strings much more flexible and difficult to instant block, because now the opponent will actually be pulled in range of her charge attack. So opponents who are looking to instant block can get jump scared by her charged monowire. Unity, the gun, has been buffed. They reduced the recovery. So just in general, she shoots the gun and recovers much more quickly. You can see, like, there's barely any delay now when she shoots the gun. And the third shot of the gun now launches. Resistance glitch has been buffed. This is the option that raises their risk dramatically to help you take advantage of that. Whenever they are under this effect, all of your heavy buttons cause a guard crush. So now if you put them in this state and you do any heavy button, you're going to be able to keep your turn because of the guard crush effect, while also making their risk gauge go through the roof. And lastly, her sprint attack sweep and sprint attack cross up both had their combo extension capabilities adjusted. This is part of the universal change in the system to avoid overly long corner carry combos. But other than that, she's seeing mostly only buffs. And with that, we have finally reached the end of the video. Thanks for listening, guys. This was a big one. I honestly still can't believe how huge this patch is. And in case you're wondering what my opinion is so far, I am very, very excited about this patch. Like, my early impression is that this is the best patch this game has ever had, and honestly one of the best patches I've seen in a long time. I think the entire community can agree, and even the devs seem to agree, that the power level of the game by the end of Season 4 was just so absurdly high that it almost made the game kind of like a meme. It was a game where you could just die in 1 second, and combos were so like overly long, and they were just guaranteed to break the wall. And I just like that they toned a lot of things down. Like, there's a lot of nerfs here, but they're nerfs that make sense, and the compensations all seem interesting. So I'm really eager to see like what the future of this game looks like, especially like at high level and just the feel of it, because everything on paper does sound extremely balanced, and it does sound like they've chosen a very good direction to take the game. But with all that being said, that does bring us to the end of the video. Definitely let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think about your character's changes? What do you think about the future? I definitely want to hear from you guys. Again, leave a like if you enjoyed this. It does help out a ton on these type of videos, and I do greatly appreciate it. If you want to see more from me, check out the links in the description below. I will be streaming this game most nights on Twitch and YouTube around 8 p.m. Central. If you want to stop by. I also plan on doing more guides in the future. I plan to do a how to play Strive guide for new players, as well as a choose your main guide, also for new players. And I will be doing a Asuka guide very soon, as soon as I get down this new Asuka. I haven't had very much time with them. You know, I had to make this video, so I've only had about 30 minutes to mess around with him. He's different. He's very, very different. I'm gonna have my hands full learning all his new stuff. I mean, he's basically a new character, but I will be making a guide on how to play him, so keep an eye out for that. But with all that being said, once again, I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.